Welcome to the very first episode of the RiverLife project. Today, well, actually, throughout the life of this channel, we'll be talking about one thing only. And it's one of those things that nearly every Nairobian has heard of, but very few actually know about it. I am talking about the Nairobi River. So why should you care, you may ask? Plenty of reasons, starting with what you had for dinner last night. But that's a question that we'll delve into later. The story of Nairobi River is really and truly fascinating. If you were to delve into the history of the river, the source of the river, where it starts from, where it goes once it exits Nairobi, and why is the river in the condition in which you've come to know it, but most importantly, how does the river directly impact your life? This and many more questions are things that we'll be exploring throughout the life of the RiverLife TV, and I will be your host, Robinson Esalima. But before we get into that, we were curious to find out, what does the average Nairobian know about the Nairobi River? To do this, we sent our very own Michelle Ayub to the streets of Cairo to interview random people. Michelle, what did you find out?
I'm Michelle Ayub, and this is the RiverLife TV. Who are we here with today?
Jerita from Kamkunji.
Majina mimi ni Andrew, mkaaji wa Nairobi side saa moja.
Mko na Han, nimetoka Makueni.
Mimi naitwa Regina Mele, na mimi natoka pande ya Majengo.
Okay, natoka Kariobangi South.
Niko na Davin Mula.
Okay, mimi naitwa John Maloba, natoka hapa Kariako Ziwani.
Naitwa Cliffordera, ni mkazi wa Embakasi West. Naitwa Douglas Aminga, natoka area ya Kamuru.
Jerita, umeisikia about Nairobi River?
No.
Kiasi sisa.
Nairobi River nimesikia.
Nairobi River nimesikia.
Nimesikia.
Unajua ni sehemu gani Nairobi River inaanzia?
Sijui.
Kwenye naanza sijui.
Sijui.
Hiyo nayo siwezi guess.
Natoka Ngong Hills na inakuja na mwaga.
Nairobi River sijui inaanzia wapi, lakini I guess inaanza Ngong Forest.
Natoka side ya Kikuyu hivyo. Nakuja zinaungana na hii nyingine inatoka side ya Kangemi. Tunapatana hapa karibu na Msiamu.
Unaweza sema imeisha sehemu gani huko Nairobi?
Hapo ndio siwezi jua.
Sijai follow up.
Kwangu mwisho mimi najua mpaka Ruiru.
So clearly, none of the interviewees knew the source of the river. And to be honest, 5 years ago, neither did I. But that's something that we'll explore later. Besides trying to get some basic information about what people know about the river, we were also curious to understand, what do people think about the river? And we got some really interesting responses. Let's go back to Michelle and find out all the cool stuff that people had to say about the Nairobi River. Michelle, over to you.
Describe Nairobi River in one word. Ungesema inakaje?
Sewage inakuwa disposed through Nairobi River. So huwa ni chafu actually.
Kwangu ni mahali maji chafu inapita. The dirty place.
Nairobi River ni inajua inakuja obviously. Hiyo ni maji chafu tu. Mahali maji yote takataka inafanya nini? Inaingia.
Ya kuanga uchafu sana.
Sema tu about Nairobi River, iko too much, iko na dirty mix sana, ni chafu.
So there you have it. Filth, uchafu, dirty mingi. Those are the most common descriptions of the Nairobi River, whether you're talking to Douglas or Andrew, Fidel, Shosh Regina, and Anne. And they're all spot on, because they are describing Nairobi River as we've come to know it. And here is a sample of water sourced from Nairobi River in Kamkunji constituency in the Gikomba area. Interestingly, this does not tell the full story of the Nairobi River, because we also have a sample of water drawn from a different section of the Nairobi River. So if both of these are sourced from the Nairobi River, different as they are, the stories are still true at the same time. We feel obligated to tell the story that stitches this story to this story, and that is going to be one very interesting story. So come with me, let's begin the journey. As we walk through this journey, we'll come to better understand the Nairobi River, not as a single river, but as a collection of many small rivers and streams known as tributaries. They all originate from different places, but eventually join to form a bigger river. Now, despite having many tributaries contributing to its flow, the Nairobi River has a main stem, and it is into this main stem that the tributaries flow. This main stem is therefore considered the source of the Nairobi River. So what we're about to show you is the origin of the main stem of the river, the place where our story of the river begins, and it will surprise you.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. This is Ondiri Swamp, the source of the infamous Nairobi River. It's located about 30 kilometers from the Nairobi Central Business District. It's in Kiambu County. So right now we are in Kiambu, and it's just off the Southern Bypass. And I know you guys are looking at it and wondering, is it it? Yes, this is a swamp, and it's also Kenya's only quaking bog. So if you were to step on the land as it is now and you were to shake it, you'd feel the earth moving under you. But today we can't do that because it's just been raining heavily, so it's really hard to get in the middle. But during drier times, it's actually possible to walk on top of what we now know as the source of the Nairobi River. And on this journey on RiverLife TV, we'll be taking you on a process along the journey to find out how do we start from what we're seeing here as Ondiri Swamp and ending up with what we now have come to associate with as Nairobi River.
The Ondiri Swamp remains fascinating to many people as it stands as a solid feature to a very liquid and mighty Nairobi River. But not too far from here, we'll begin to unravel this intriguing story.
So this is River Nyong'ara, and behind me is Ondiri Swamp. So that's where we were previously. Now you need to think of Ondiri Swamp as being a water tank, and then the water tank has an outlet, and that outlet is Nyong'ara River. And this is the main stream that starts off the journey of Nairobi River. As you can see, the water is clean and pristine. But from here, the story gets worse, the story gets darker, and the story gets murkier. So here we are at the Goreti Market. We are barely 4 kilometers away from Ondiri Swamp, where we started. And this, what you're seeing here, is the same Nyong'ara River, which is the outlet from Ondiri Swamp that has flowed until here. But as you can see here, the story has completely changed. And from here, we still have another at least 50 kilometers of what we would be calling the Nairobi River. And from here, it just simply gets worse by the meter. And that is part of the story that we'll be bringing for you as we narrate the transformation of the Nairobi River.
As the river slowly snakes its way from the Goreti Market in a southeasterly direction, its journey will become an even louder cry for help. And shortly, it will become evident why. From here, we will reconnect with the river about 20 kilometers downstream, where we shall encounter the full scale of its tribulations. Well, we are now in Kamkunji, 2 kilometers from the Nairobi Central Business District and approximately 30 kilometers from where our journey began at Ondiri. The most notable landmark and reference point to where we are is the famous Gikomba Market, which is visible just across the river. Looking at the state of the river here at Kamkunji, one sees the poster child of what ails the river. Here at Kamkunji, one gets a front row seat to view Nairobi's version of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that will haunt the river for most of its journey. The four horsemen represent the four things that are rapidly choking life out of the river and threatening its very existence. So, what are these four things? Number one, solid waste. 2, raw and untreated sewage. 3, industrial waste. And finally, unplanned land use. All these are very well represented and converge in perfect harmony here at Kamkunji and will persist for most of the river's journey. Starting with raw and untreated sewage. While at the historical Kamkunji Park, we can, for instance, see a sewer trunk line originating from Nairobi's industrial area, which burst and was destroyed during the heavy rains in 2024. Now, all that sewage is discharging directly into the river unabated. Early this year, a contractor was called to fix the sewer line, but because of poor planning, the work site collapsed during excavation, leading to the death of 2 workers. Since then, there's been no further news on the fate of this sewer line. What is depressing is that this is not an isolated case. In actual fact, there are about 12 sections where arterial sewer trunk lines running along the river are broken and are discharging directly into the river. The second biggest challenge to the river is the dumping of solid waste. Gikomba is the largest market in Eastern Africa for used textiles, or what we call here mtumba. It is estimated that every year Kenya imports about 200 million kilos of used textiles, and approximately 30 to 40% of that, or let's say around 80 million kilos, is discarded as waste due to poor quality. Much of this waste ends up in Nairobi River. When one looks across the river, one can see mountains of waste. These are actually mountains of textile waste. We're therefore not just talking statistics. Additionally, as part of the Nairobi County Government waste management practice, private companies and waste collecting youth groups are directed to deposit their waste at designated points known as holding centers. Several of these holding centers are right on the banks of the Nairobi River. One cannot, of course, forget the infamous Dandora Dam site, which also stands right next to the river. Most of this waste inevitably ends up in the river. Then we come to the third challenge. I start this by referencing a notice issued on the 31st of January 2024 by the National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, to 29 companies that were accused of dumping either chemical or solid waste or both into the Nairobi River. The companies were given a 30-day notice to remedy the problem. It is not clear at this point if this has been resolved, but the varying colors of the water in Nairobi River, ranging from black to dark green and dirty brown, is a happy combination of industrial chemical waste and raw sewage that has been dumped into the river, and is a strong suggestion that this is a problem that is far from being solved. Now, this may seem trivial until one realizes that about 30% of the fresh food supply in Nairobi comes from the Athi River Basin and is directly irrigated all year round with Nairobi River waters. All the waste that we are generating and dumping into the river is being neatly repackaged and sent back to us as fresh veggies on our tables. And now we come to the final challenge: the crowding of unplanned settlements right next to the river. Settlements which mostly lack adequate system for solid waste or sewage management pose a health hazard to the river. Equally, during heavy rains, occupiers of these settlements are also at risk of loss of life and property, as happened during the floods in the first quarter of 2024. You now have an overview of the main challenges facing the river, and it should be equally clear by now that solving this will not be a solo effort. It requires all hands on deck. So these two water samples are both stories of the Nairobi River. Though they each tell a very different story, both stories are true at the same time. It is the convergence and divergence of these stories that make the Nairobi River such a fascinating story. We'll take you to the lengths of the river both literally and figuratively. From Ondiri, the humble and inconspicuous beginnings of the river, to Ruai, where the river merges with the Athi River, and this mighty confluence becomes the larger Athi River as the journey continues to the Indian Ocean. But this isn't just a story, it's a movement. And that's why RiverLife TV exists. RiverLife TV is here to document, expose, and ignite change. Our mission? To bring Nairobi River back to life by telling the untold stories of its past, present, and future. And our vision? A clean, thriving river system restored by the power of community action, awareness, and accountability. If you recall, we asked at the beginning, why is this relevant now? In August of 2022, President William Ruto launched the biggest and the most ambitious initiative so far to restore the Nairobi River. This is the Nairobi River Regeneration Initiative, spearheaded by the Nairobi Rivers Commission. But this is by no means the first, and neither will it be the last. We have documented at least 15 different initiatives dating as far back as 1999. Some completed, others ongoing. And these are just what we considered large initiatives. There are many smaller ones that we came across, but were difficult to analyze, and good data is hard to come by. The amounts spent in these initiatives range from 100 to 250 million US dollars, which is approximately 12 to 32 billion Kenya shillings. The latest initiative is estimated to cost approximately 400 million US dollars, which is about 50 billion Kenya shillings. And the big question in everybody's minds is, will we see a return on investment on the latest initiative? The answer to this question brings us to the first of the three main reasons for the existence of RiverLife TV. So firstly, we have the opportunity and privilege to track from birth the evolution of the new government-led initiative under the Nairobi Rivers Commission. We will compile monthly reports where we'll be tracking the progress or lack thereof and presenting to you via this channel. Secondly, we want to highlight the other non-governmental-led initiatives contributing to the restoration of the river, especially community-led efforts. Additionally, we are hoping that the extra visibility will trigger more collaboration between the different actors who will now get to know each other and will hopefully coalesce to achieve an even bigger impact. Finally, we want to bring to you the science of the river in new, interesting, fun, and accessible ways. In large part, what this means is that we'll be collecting different data about the health of the river and then measuring that against the different interventions to tell whether the interventions are having an impact, positive or negative, and more importantly, what that means and the impact it has directly on you. So how are we going to do this? Firstly, we have established an amazing network of river stewards along different sections of the river who will be responsible for collecting the stories and the data that we'll be sharing with you. And we of course have our very able Michelle Ayub on the field working with the river stewards. Secondly, we're building a really cool interactive website which will be layered with stories and data from the field on a regular basis, and also providing an objective tracking mechanism and a goldmine for data enthusiasts. This series is not just about watching. This is a call to action. If you are passionate and want to be part of this legacy building initiative in any capacity, please reach out to us on the email below. Meanwhile, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, but most importantly, talk about this. This is RiverLife TV, and this is just a beginning. See you at the next episode.